Welcome back to part three of our four-part series on beer. So we are at the point now where we're going to talk about why barley was the choice and is the choice for most of the beer that is made today. Clearly, there are wheat beers, there are oat beers, and there are a lot of whiskey is based on corn. But barley is traditionally the choice because wheat produces less enzymes to break down the starch. So that's difficult. And when it says difficult, you can add, takes a long time to that if there are fewer enzymes. Although today we can probably add enzymes to that to cut that time down. Oat has too much protein and too much fat, makes a different product than most people are interested in. Although, again, you can find oat beers these days. Corn takes too much heat to untangle these starches that are all starched together, and corn oil has a tendency to go rancid. And again, there are people who are overcoming these because you can get a corn-based product. When we go to booze, distilled spirits, that matters a whole lot less because a lot of those things are left in the distillation pot. But barley, particularly when beer was getting started, was the choice because barley's easy. It's grass. I don't have to do anything crazy to get beer out of barley. On the upper left corner, in the upper left corner, you will see seeds of grains of barley in their natural state, with that shell coating on the outside. And on the right, you will see barley that has been sprouted. And this is part of the process that we're going to talk about today. Barley is the most common malted grain, and that's what that sprouted barley is. It's been malted. And barley is chosen because it has a high content of enzymes. Um, the other thing is the husk in barley is retained. It's used as a filter in the process of beer making when the beer goes from the fermenting tank to the next tank in a process called lautering. Those husks are used as part of the filter. Um, let's move ahead. There are two types of barley. There's 2-row barley and 6-row barley, and we'll talk about that in a couple slides rather than spend time here talking about it. So here is on the stalk what 2-row barley looks like on the left and 6-row barley looks like on the right. And yeah, they don't look very different other than there's six rows here and only 2 rows on the left. So the obvious difference is the arrangement and the number of rows of barley on the stalk. Brewers don't make a big deal out of this. This is not what they base their decisions on. There's some other things, such as 6-row barley has more protein and more enzymes than 2-row. That could be a good thing. It also contains less carbohydrates. That can also be a good thing depending on what the brewer is trying to do. Most brewers, however, feel that 2-row has some benefits too, that it produces fuller, maltier flavor, and that the 6-row, on the other end of the spectrum, produces something that tastes more like the grain that it starts life out as. The other interesting thing is that 6-row is grown only in North America, so it's a Western civilization kind of thing. 6-row barley has become a symbol of what the Europeans don't use, so it's a point of differentiation. It's part of the marketing play that 6-row is better or more American than an inferior 2-row that those Europeans are using. Folks, drink what you like, whether it's 2-row or 6-row, and the end product really doesn't matter a whole lot because there's a lot of variables in the process of making beer. So again, barley was chosen because it's easy, it's a grass, and if you watch this YouTube video that the link is out on the Canvas site for the course, you will see, you will learn more about barley and this process. But barley, the process is going to take the barley down to about 14% moisture, and within 2 days get it to 46% moisture. And here is the process, which is known as malting. It's the process of converting barley or any other cereal grain into a malt so that it can be used in brewing, distilling, or other types of food processing. And there is a picture at the end of this discussion which shows the malting floor and that the product is laid 3 to 4.5 inches deep on the malting floor. We'll talk about that when we get to it. So the process starts with drying to get a moisture content below 14%. And then the seeds are stored for about 6 weeks so that they are out of their dormant state. The next step is steeping, where the grain is immersed in water 2 to 3 times for 2 to 3 days. And that allows the grain to sprout and get those little white sprouts that are coming out of the seed. The third step is germination. And when the grain hits about 46% moisture, it's transferred to the malting or germination floor that we're going to show you, where it's constantly turned over for 4 to 6 days while it's air dried. And it's constantly turned over because you want this to be as uniform as possible. You don't want hot spots and cold spots in your malting process. When the grain is sprouted, it's called green malt, and that green malt is then dried and toasted a little bit to get the right color and specification that the brewer is looking for. And we'll also see that malts range from very pale through a crystal color and amber color all the way to a chocolate or black color, much like the process where coffee beans are roasted to different colors that affect the taste. Then there's a smoking process with smoke coming from the bottom up through the grain at about 55 degrees C or 131 Fahrenheit to further dry and smoke the malt. Uh, the Balvenie distillery in Scotland has a very nice video of their process, and if you're interested, you can go there and see more about this process. This is the Balvenie's floor, where I said this malt is 3 to 4.5 inches thick, and people are constantly going and raking this and turning it over to try to keep the process as uniform as possible. Here on the right, we have some light grain. Here in the middle, we have something that's been toasted a little bit. And you can see on the left a darker grain. So you can imagine that the grain on the right is going to produce a very light colored beer, and it's going to be light in flavor, going all the way through to the one on the left, which is going to produce a darker beer, and it's going to have a very different flavor profile, much like light roast coffee beans and dark roast coffee beans give you different flavor in the final product. So again, malt is just germinated cereal grain that's gone through the malting process. Modifies the grain starches, alpha amylase and beta amylase, processes the sugar into various starting materials for the yeast to play with and to develop alcohol. It also develops other enzymes, proteases, which break down proteins that can be used by the yeast. Malt also contains a small amount of other sugars, which are also part of the process. So this is why this malting process and the different grains and even year-to-year variations can give you some variations in your final product. So malted grain is used in beer and whiskey because they're essentially start life as the same thing. In malted milkshakes, malt vinegar, uh, Whoppers, which are a favorite of mine. You can buy a half-gallon box of Whoppers and inhale them in about 10 minutes. Ovaltine is a malted product, so there's definitely a distinct flavor that malting brings to a product. That's where we're going to end this session at. This is part 3. So there's one more part where we're going to talk about the rest of our information on beer. Hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you in part 4. Bye-bye.